just tell us a little bit about what you do before we ask questions?
Sure, so I'm an architect. When you say you're an architect, it means you're licensed to practice architecture. So like a doctor has to have a license, or a lawyer has to pass the bar exam to be a lawyer. An architect has to pass their own set of requirements in order to be called an architect. So somebody that just designs, say, houses isn't necessarily an architect. So you have to pass an exam and be licensed by the state. So there's a lot of strict requirements that go along with that. And the reason that we do that is because as an architect, we're responsible for the health, safety, and welfare of all the occupants of our building. So if I designed a building that fell down and you were in it, you would be really sad and I would be in a lot of trouble. So because it's such an important job, the state wants to license us and make sure we're all qualified. So in order to become an architect, you have to go to school for 5 or 6 years. I went to school for 6 years. And then you do an internship process, which is another 3 to 4 years. And then you take a really, really long test, which takes about a week to do. So that's how you become an architect. So I've been practicing architecture since 1996, so almost 20 years, except for the time I took a little bit of time off when Peyton was born, and then I came back to the practice. So I do a lot of school work. I also work a lot on churches, office buildings, higher education, which would be college and university work, things like that. So big commercial projects, things that cost anywhere from $100,000 up to $20 million or $30 million. So big stuff. So one of the things that our firm does is we do a lot of school work. And in order to do that, we're always thinking about what is the next wave, what's education doing? Where's education moving? How are students being taught? How do they need to learn? Those kinds of things. And so I shared with Mrs. Bonner kind of a snapshot of our process of what we do. Because one thing that we're always looking at, and when she said 21st century school spaces, that's exactly what we talk about a lot of times. You know, in looking at collaboration, communication, critical thinking, and creativity. Those are the 4 C's. Those are the things that we kind of focus on a lot of times. And so rather than thinking about what kind of box do you need for your classroom, is what kind of things do you want to do inside your space? And maybe a box isn't the right shape for that. So let's talk about the activities that you're going to do first. So that's kind of where you guys come in. So I understand you're doing research. Yes? And you might have questions for me. So let's get into questions. Yes?
What do you think school buildings will look like in 2020?
You can't ask me that because that was my question. It's a little harder than that because there's lots of things that define the way a school building looks or works or behaves. So do you think the buildings that I'm building right now look exactly like this building? No. How do you think they might be different? More modern?
Yeah.
Like with respect to what?
Because the new modern stuff like smartboards and chalkboards.
Technology. Technology is huge right now. So with advances in technology, you don't have to necessarily plug your computer into the wall. You've got Wi-Fi. You don't have to have just one smartboard or one projector. There's lots of mobile solutions. There's also ways for your teacher to be working on her computer or iPad and it to go directly to your iPad or your computer so that you don't even have to look up at a wall. So since you guys are all facing different directions, you don't all have to like turn around and look like that to try and see the board. You can see it on your own screen. The other thing that we're seeing in technology is, have you ever heard of the flipped classroom? Does anybody know what that is? No? Mrs. Bonner knows. So with a flipped classroom, when you're at home, you read about the topic that you're learning about. You give yourself the lecture at home, or you watch a video that your teachers put together. And then when you come to school, you work on the homework. And so you work on the homework when your teacher's there to help you, or when your group is there to help you, those kinds of things. So it's the opposite of what you normally do. Normally you have a lecture here at school, and then you go home and do homework. With a flipped classroom, it's the other way around. And sometimes you'll watch a video or a blog or something like that as your lecture rather than what you're doing in class. That way you have more time to ask questions, to kind of investigate things, that kind of thing. So that's another way that it's going to be more modern, things that we're doing. Let's see. What was the question I asked? How are they going to be different?
How will they look like in 2020?
Yeah, okay, what will they look like in 2020? So another thing that we're doing is, do you guys always like to be in one room like this, all squished together? Is that your favorite way to work? Yeah? No, it's nobody's favorite way to work. Well, maybe one person. Then you don't have to raise your hand, whoever that person might be. One thing that we see a lot in schools and that we're doing is we're not just doing one classroom. We're doing a variety of sizes of spaces with different things in them. So you can see in your room you've got kind of this soft seating area over here. You've got kind of this hard surface here with tables in the middle. You've got some other separate tables over here. You've got some countertops over there. We're not just designing one room for one teacher and 30 students. What we're doing is a group of spaces. Sometimes they're small, sometimes they're medium, sometimes they're large, so that a teacher can maybe give a lecture for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and then the students can break out into different areas. So some people like to learn on their own. Is anybody an individual learner who likes to learn on their own? Okay. Who likes to learn in kind of a smallish group? You know, maybe 3 or 4 people? Yeah. And who likes to learn in a little bit bigger group, maybe 7 or 8, 9 people? Anybody? And that's okay. So we're designing spaces that can accommodate all those different styles of learning at the same time. So Mrs. Bonner can see everything that's going on with all her groups, but you guys get the opportunity to learn the way you like to learn, the way that's exciting to you, and the way that you learn the best. Because a lot of people don't pay attention after about 15 or 20 minutes. They kind of get tired and they're just like, whatever. Hey, look, there's a hole in the ceiling. They're not learning. So if we can put you in a space that you're more comfortable, then you're going to learn better. If we give you the opportunity to stand at your desk rather than sit at your desk, you know, some people really antsy. They're really antsy. There's workstations, there are desks where you can stand up high. There's chairs, they're like the bouncy balls that you can bounce. If you're just really fidgety, you can just bounce on your ball. Some people like to be in a rolly swivel chair so that they can just kind of spin like this because they can't sit still. And that's okay. You know what? Middle school students, junior high students are bouncy people. And that's all right. So if we can provide a learning environment or a classroom, we don't even like to call them classrooms, we call them learning environments. Because maybe it is a small room, maybe it's a really big room with kind of a cozy area. You know, it's not necessarily a classroom, it's not 4 walls and a ceiling and a floor. So a lot of times there'll be really big spaces, kind of medium spaces, smaller spaces, and tiny spaces. Okay, what other questions?
Just by looking at this classroom, what do you think you could improve it? How would you improve it?
This classroom? Well, things that I like to include in a classroom is natural daylight. So you've got a lot of windows, so that's fantastic. The light fixtures you have up here, it looks like you can turn half of them on and half of them off, so that's good. But sometimes what we also do is provide lights where you can change the color of the light. So sometimes in the morning you might want kind of a warmer glow, but in the afternoon you want a cooler color. So we can go from more of a yellow to a blue or to a pink, depending on what kind of mood you're in. So to help keep you awake in the afternoon right after lunch, I'm always super sleepy, you can change the color of the light in the space, or you can change the level of the light, whether it's a little bit dimmer or a little bit brighter, to kind of help you adjust to how you're feeling at that moment in time, which is kind of cool. So in this space, I would like to see more soft surfaces. So this room can be a little bit echoey, I bet. You've got some curtains and you've got some acoustical ceiling tile, but there's a lot of hard surfaces in here. If you had chairs that had a soft surface, or if you had some carpet in areas, it wouldn't be as echoey. You could talk louder without bothering your neighbor, which is nice. And it gives it a more warm, comfortable, homey feel. So this room is kind of beige. There's beige on the walls and some white, and that's okay. But would a pop of color be good? Like orange, red, blue, green, you know, to make it energetic and to make you feel good. What colors make you guys feel good?
Red.
Green. See, everybody's got a different favorite color. And there's no reason why you can't include all those colors if you do it in a smart way. We're not talking about this is a red wall, this is a blue wall, this is a green wall, this is a yellow wall. No. But there's lots of things like that you can do. The other thing that you can do in a space like this is to have different types of seating. So like I said, sometimes you like to have a tall workstation, you know, that's like bar height or kitchen, you know, like your kitchen counter. Like if you have like higher seating with maybe a stool. You've got a couple of soft seats, but maybe a little bit more soft seating so that you can have a small group of people kind of sit together in a comfortable seating area. Desks or tables that are a little bit smaller, but have wheels so that you can move them around into different configurations. So sometimes if you're working in a group of 4, you can have 2 smaller tables together. If you're working in a group of 12, you can have 6 tables together. Or if you guys want to do something where you're reading aloud to your classmates, you can all sit in a big circle and face each other. So if you have wheels on the bottom of your furniture, you can move it anywhere you need it to go, which is kind of awesome as well. It looks like in this space, maybe you need some more or different storage. So I see books stacked on top of the radiators over here, and a lot of books over stacked on this
It's
stuff.
not tragic, it's just tragic that they're stacked up like that and they're not out for display. I got rid of everything knowing we were getting into this.
Right, so better places to kind of store things. So Mrs. Bonner probably has a collection of her own books that she brings in. Then there's probably student books. You guys probably have stuff. How can you organize the stuff within the space so that Mrs. Bonner can display her collection? Because I'm sure she has books that she wants you to read and wants you to be able to look at and kind of browse through. Is there a way to do that, or is there a better way to do that? Whether it's a built-in storage piece or something that's mobile. You know, if there was a mobile unit that had book storage on it, she could wheel it out to a specific location, and then students in that area would be able to use it. Something else that we're doing is to try and make everything multifunctional. So, at a middle school that I'm doing right now in Iowa, we have the mobile storage units, where students all have like kind of a plastic bin or tote that they can put their student projects or works or books or whatever in, and it's on a mobile unit, but the back of it is all a marker board. So you can wheel it up to your desk, flip it around, you can use it to like write notes and stuff on as a marker board, flip it around, you've got storage on the other side, then you can push it against the wall when you're done with it. So be thinking about just like brainstorm ideas. You know, and that's what we did when we were designing that project. We all just sat down around a table and said, wouldn't it be cool if? And so that's always a great way to kind of start a discussion. Wouldn't it be cool if? And then you fill in the blanks. And it looks like you guys are pretty good about, you know, everybody just writing down their ideas and pinning it up. And that's okay. That's what you want to do, because you're not going to know what a good idea is until you see it up against all the other ideas. All right, who has another question? Yeah.
How do you start a design?
How do you start a design? Research. Usually we listen to our clients. And so we'll meet with them, we'll study them, we'll talk about what their goals are, what their objectives are, what the constraints might be. You know, a constraint is something that limits what you can do. So a lot of times a budget is a constraint. For this project that you guys are doing, the size of this room is a constraint. You have to work within it. So kind of identifying what are all those things that are going to stop you. But really thinking about what is your goal, and then looking at what are the different possible solutions to meet that goal. And that's kind of where we start with research. How about back here? You guys, diligent thinkers, what do you got over here? Yes?
How would you make a model or a prototype?
Well, there's lots of different ways to make a model or a prototype. There's 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional. There's small scale and large scale. So it kind of depends on what your capabilities are. So if you want it to really be a prototype, you need to be able to experience it and interact in it. So I like full scale. That's a little more challenging. And I think maybe what I suggested to Mrs. Browner was to go into a large space and kind of use cardboard boxes, use tape, use anything you can come up with that's free and easily available, and to kind of basically lay out the space in real life. So has anybody here been part of like building a new house? And it's kind of hard to imagine what the spaces are going to look like. And sometimes you'll be like, okay, well how big is 10 by 12? I don't know how big 10 by 12 is, that sounds big. So you'll kind of take a tape measure and kind of lay it out and measure it. That's a good way to do it. Another great way to do it is to use a program like SketchUp. SketchUp is free. You are all very smart 12, 13, 14-year-old, 15-year-olds. You probably know how to use it better than I do. So it's a free program that does 3D modeling. You can make buildings, you can make rooms, you can do all that kind of stuff. You follow the little tutorial, you'll have no problem with it. But you can put your imaginary SketchUp person in the space and look around it and see what it looks like. So that's a great way to do prototyping too. You don't actually have to build something physically. You can do it online. or digitally.